feeling down and low, you ain't got no place to go. You're reaching for that higher ground. No one else seems to be around. Yeah. When you're lost, can't find your way. It takes so much just to get through the day. Trust that hope deep inside, yeah. And let that be your guide, yeah. So lift your head up high with arms open wide. Let that voice inside set your spirit free and just be.
I'm James Harlan. I'm the rector of the Church of Bethesda-by-the-Sea in Palm Beach, Florida. Seasons was a helpful starting place because we had to have a framework for something that was completely unknown. And it was a valid framework at the time that turned out not necessarily to play out the way we expected, but it gave us some stepping stones to move forward. This is less about some seasons that we're going through temporarily and more about a whole new path on which we're living our journey of mission and ministry. For me, that's how it's changed. But I think we needed the seasons. Someone said early on in this, some writer said, a lot of people are preparing for this pandemic as if it's a storm. Some of the smarter people are preparing for this pandemic as if it's a season. The really smart ones are preparing for it as if it's an ice age. I think we'd be well served to go back and relearn how the church lived in other times like this in the past. We haven't had a time like this in your and my lifetime. But other Christians have. And if you look back 500 years or 1,000 years or 1,500 years, you see a resilient church. You see a church that has found the grace to let go. I like to talk about a trapeze. If you're going to fly on a trapeze, you've got to let go of that first bar. And you've got to trust you'll be caught by the catcher. But there's this moment where you have to let go and just be midair. And we haven't lived in a time like that as a global church in our lifetimes. But we can learn from the times in the church where it has been like that. We can grab on to the next bar and move into a new time of mission and ministry. And I think we have to. The other side of this, of course, is that all the experts are saying that the church is dying and becoming irrelevant. And one of the things we found in the last year that it's become even more relevant for a lot of people who needed a source of hope and needed a message of care and concern and found it in the church and in the gospel. If we can continue to be that source of hope and reaching out to people even who have never darkened the door of a church, we're going to be fine. God's going to do that work whether we do or not. The question is whether we're going to participate in God's saving work going forward or if we're going to become a museum. First word would be disorienting. I've never experienced a time when time was so confusing and space was so confusing. When we're recording a service 3 days or 4 days in advance and then watching it in a space from another space, it's just disorienting. I think we adjusted well. I think this is a resilient community, but I still think even a year later that's the case. And it's nice to get back to in-person worship. I think the next word is disheartening. It just is so sad to see the loss of life, the loss of livelihoods that have come out of this pandemic and touched even our life at Bethesda-by-the-Sea. We like to think that somehow those bridges make us impervious to hardship, and they don't. It's hit close to home, and there have been many days I've just been in tears over the losses. And I think the third word is encouraged, which is the opposite, and yet it's true. To see the resilience, to see the ways that people have taken an opportunity to deepen their spiritual life, to live in a place of compassion that maybe they didn't before, has really been encouraging to see and experience. The pandemic here has definitely changed the way I think about ministry and conceive it. It's blown the walls off the place in a lot of ways. It's made virtual ministry not only viable, but necessary and vital. And I think we will do ourselves a disservice as a church if we just see that as an accidental adjunct and not a calling to do mission in different ways. It's a call to really embrace being outside the box we were forced out of over the last year. And I think if we can do that, the church is going to find incredible new life. It's going to be hard for churches that are really set in good ways from the past. But I think it's possible, and it'll be a good thing. I think we've seen an ability to accept the timelessness of God, the eternity of God. There's a great Greek word, telos, which means the end of things, and not the end, the finish of time, but the end, the point, the goal, the trajectory. Because our life of faith has a trajectory and an end, and it's usually way beyond what we can even consider, let alone grasp. And I think this has helped us understand that telos, that end, matters. And the way we get there may not be what we expect. It certainly hasn't been in the last year, and probably won't be in the future. Early on in the pandemic, we conceived of this as time that would have a beginning and an end. And I remember telling people whatever Sunday we're back, as if it was going to magically come back, would be Easter Day. And now we're realizing there's no coming back. First of all, back is not a word I like to use in talking about this pandemic. We're not going back to anything. We're going forward. God's calling us to something new. And it'll look a lot like what things looked like, but it won't be the same. But there was also that notion not just of coming back, but of a moment where things would sort of look like they were going to look, rather than over weeks and weeks and weeks of now we're doing something outside, and now we're changing the time here, and now it's Easter, and we have to do 9 services outside. And by the way, at Christmas, we did 9 services outside over 3 nights, and all these things that we've done. But we had to have that sense of time with a beginning and an end, or I don't think we could have started. And we've got a capacity to look at time with that end, that telos, even if it's far away. We're more comfortable with that than we would have been. We don't need a chronological end in the way we did a year and a half ago. We have a better sense of that telos, that eternal end, that vocational end. And I think we have a comfort level with moving ahead, even if we don't know the chronological timing of things. For me, there have been a number of Easter experiences in this. Easter being one of them. Holy Week and Easter were truly extraordinary. They were so far from what we normally do. And it made it an experience of new life. Especially having that great vigil of Easter out in the garth like we did. Bathed in candlelight with this big new fire burning brightly in the darkness. Baptizing members of the body of Christ in our Bethesda fountain, in those healing waters that remind us of our calling, right out there in the garth. It was an experience for me of Easter, of resurrection, of new life. I hope that what we can do is let go of the need for those experiences of new life to be wrapped up completely in our building or the way we've always done things. Again, not that those are all going to go away completely, but they aren't always the source of new life. We can do things in some different ways. We can live and worship and serve and embrace new experiences and new paradigms, even while holding on to our tradition.
Scars between your